Imagine waking up to a blinding flash in the sky, followed by a shockwave so powerful it knocks you off your feet even though you re hundreds of miles away. No explosion site, no meteorite remains, just endless devastation. What could possibly cause such destruction yet leave no trace behind? Today, we re-diving deep into one of the greatest enigmas in Earth's history, the Tunguska Explosion of 1908, a mystery that still baffles scientists, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike for over a century. Experts have tried to uncover the truth behind the Tunguska blast. Was it a cosmic collision, a secret experiment gone wrong, or something beyond our world? In this video, we'll uncover the theories, the science, and the strange facts that might finally reveal what really happened in the skies over Siberia. It was early morning, June 30th, 1908. The Siberian taiga, a land of endless forest, silence, and isolation, was just waking up. The sun was low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the misty trees. But that morning, something extraordinary broke the calm. Without warning, a brilliant blue-white light cut across the sky, brighter than anything anyone had ever seen. Witnesses later said it was as if a second sun had appeared out of nowhere, streaking from the southeast to the northwest. Within seconds, the peaceful wilderness of Tunguska was about to experience the most powerful explosion ever recorded in human history, and no one was prepared for what followed. Hundreds of miles away, in remote villages, people were jolted awake by the sudden glare. They rushed outside, shielding their eyes from the intense light. Some thought it was the end of the world. Others believed the gods were angry. Even at distances of 400 to 500 miles, the heat was so strong that people could feel their skin burn. In the next moment, a deafening explosion ripped through the air, a thunder so loud it echoed across the plains, shattering windows and knocking people off their feet. The ground trembled as if the earth itself had been struck by an enormous hammer. What actually happened in that instant was beyond comprehension. An object, possibly a comet or asteroid, had entered Earth's atmosphere at incredible speed. Scientists estimate it was traveling at nearly 60,000 kilometers per hour, glowing intensely as friction turned it into a blazing fireball. When it reached an altitude of about 8 kilometers above the ground, it exploded with the force of nearly 15 megatons of TNT. That's equivalent to about 1,000 times the energy of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The resulting shockwave flattened an estimated 80 million trees across more than 2,000 square kilometers of forest, an area larger than the city of Los Angeles. But the strangest part? No impact crater was ever found? Imagine the confusion of the few who survived close to the epicenter. Reindeer herders from the Awenki tribe saw the fireball blazing across the sky moments before the explosion. Some were thrown into the air, others felt the heat so intensely that their clothes caught fire. For miles around, trees were stripped of their branches, lying in neat rows, all pointing away from the central point of the blast, as though some invisible hand had swept through the forest with godlike force. Birds vanished, animals disappeared, and for days the forest burned with smoldering flames. The shock waves didn't just stop in Siberia, they rippled across continents. Instruments as far away as Britain recorded the pressure changes. Seismic stations detected tremors circling the globe, not once, but twice. The night skies in Europe and Asia glowed eerily bright for several nights afterward. In London, people reported being able to read newspapers outside at midnight, illuminated by strange silver clouds high in the atmosphere. Something enormous had happened, something that defied all logic. And yet, for years, the world barely paid attention. The Tunguska region was so remote that no one could reach the site for almost 2 decades. Russia at the time was on the brink of revolution. Few had the resources or will to investigate an event that occurred in such an isolated, desolate land. So the mystery lingered unexamined, unexplained, and growing more mythical with every passing year. When scientists finally did turn their attention to Tunguska, they found evidence that only deepened the mystery. Eyewitnesses described a trail of fire crossing the sky followed by 2 loud explosions like artillery fire. The timing suggested the object didn't strike the ground directly, it exploded mid-air. The forest pattern supported that. At ground zero, trees were left standing upright but stripped of bark and branches, while all around them lay millions of others flattened outward in a perfect radial pattern. It was the signature of an immense airburst, but from what? Some survivors described glowing clouds that lingered in the sky afterward, turning night into day. Others said they heard a hissing sound before the explosion, followed by waves of heat. One witness, a man named Semyon Semenov, recalled seeing the sky split in two and fire covering the forest. He was thrown several meters by the blast. After that, he said, there was a noise like stones falling from the sky or guns firing. The earth trembled. His account would later become one of the most quoted testimonies of the event. The sheer scale of destruction baffled early investigators. How could such power exist without leaving a crater? If it had been a meteorite, where was the metal or rock debris? If it was a comet, how did it create such an intense heat wave? The Tunguska explosion didn't just level a forest. It challenged the very understanding of natural forces on Earth. In modern terms, if the same explosion occurred over a populated area today, it would destroy everything within a 30-kilometer radius instantly. Cities like London or New York would be reduced to ash and rubble. The Tunguska event, in its remote isolation, spared humanity from a catastrophe of unimaginable scale. Yet the unanswered questions began immediately. Was it a rock from space? A comet's icy core? Or something more mysterious? Something beyond science? The lack of a crater, the strange atmospheric effects, the global shockwaves all pointed to something that defied normal explanation. Scientists would later call it an airburst, but that simple term could never fully capture the awe and terror of what the people of Tunguska witnessed that summer morning. The world would only learn of it years later, and by then the event had already transformed from a mere explosion into a legend, a haunting reminder that sometimes even in the modern age the Earth still holds secrets powerful, enough to shake it to its very core. When we try to understand the Tunguska explosion, the most haunting part I send to just the scientific mystery. It asks what the people on the ground actually saw and felt. Long before any research teams or theories appeared, it was the locals, the Winki tribesmen, the farmers, and villagers of Siberia who lived through that terrifying morning. Their words, passed down through generations, still capture the raw shock and confusion of an event that no human being could ever expect to witness. The sun had barely risen when the sky began to glow with an unnatural light. To those living hundreds of miles from the epicenter, the day began like any other, quiet, calm, and cold. But within moments, everything changed. Witnesses described seeing a streak of fire tearing through the heavens. It wasn't a shooting star, it wasn't lightning. It was something much more enormous, something alive with energy. The light was blinding, a dazzling blue-white blaze that illuminated the sky as though the sun itself had descended. People dropped what they were doing and looked upward, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Some said the object was the size of the moon. Others claimed it left behind a trail of fire, hissing and roaring as it cut through the morning air. In one small settlement, a man named Semyon Semenov later gave an account that would become legendary among researchers. He said, "Suddenly in the north sky, the sky was split in two, and high above the forest, the whole northern part of the sky appeared covered with fire. At that moment I felt a great heat, as if my shirt was on fire. I wanted to tear my shirt off and throw it away, but then the sky closed, and there was a strong thump. I was thrown several meters across the ground." His words painted a picture of a power so immense that it could not only light up the world, but throw a grown man into the air from miles away. All across the region, similar accounts poured in. People described the ground shaking beneath them like an earthquake. Horses panicked and bolted from their stables. Windows shattered, dishes fell from shelves, and doors blew open. Some said they saw waves of hot air rushing through the forest, strong enough to knock over trees and set the ground smoldering. Others recalled the sound first a high-pitched whistle, then an explosion so loud it echoed for minutes, bouncing across the distant hills. The sound was unlike thunder or gunfire. It was something much deeper, a roar that seemed to come from the sky and the earth at the same time. Even those hundreds of miles away felt the blast. In villages as far as 500 kilometers from the epicenter, People were thrown from their chairs and their ears rang from the pressure wave. Some thought an earthquake had struck. Others, living in the shadow of the Russian Orthodox faith, believed it was divine punishment. In an age before airplanes or nuclear bombs, the only explanation many could imagine was that heaven itself had opened in anger. One Iwenki herder later said he saw a fiery body streaking across the horizon, followed by a great wave of heat that scorched the grass and killed his reindeer. The force of the explosion was so great that some Iwenki camps were completely destroyed. Families fled in panic, not understanding what they had just witnessed. For them, the event became more than a strange phenomenon, it became part of their folklore, a story passed down with a mix of awe and fear. The reports didn't stop there. In European Russia, more than 1,500 kilometers away, people observed strange atmospheric effects. The night skies glowed with pale, ghostly light, as though the sun had refused to set. In London, astonished residents wrote in newspapers that they could read their evening papers outdoors at midnight without lamps. Some thought it was a sign of the approaching apocalypse. Others believed it was a scientific curiosity, a strange natural wonder with no explanation. No one could connect these glowing skies with the devastation unfolding deep in the Siberian wilderness. Years later, when the first scientists arrived in the region, they were stunned by the consistency of the eyewitness accounts. Every story pointed to the same direction. The explosion had come from the sky, not from the ground. There were no reports of craters, no evidence of anything striking the earth directly. Instead, people described a blast that seemed to hang in midair, like the heavens themselves had detonated. And yet, even among the witnesses, there was confusion. Some said they saw the object travel horizontally, like a comet crossing the sky. Others insisted it fell vertically, plunging toward the ground before exploding. A few described not one but two flashes, separated by seconds, followed by a roaring wind. It was chaos, an experience so violent and surreal that memory itself seemed to warp under its power. As stories spread beyond Siberia, each retelling added another layer of mystery. Local hunters spoke of burned patches of forest that glowed at night for weeks afterward. Fishermen claimed the rivers ran black with ash. There were even whispers that some of the trees near the blast site continued to grow at strange angles, as if twisted by invisible energy. Whether these details were true or born from the fear of the unknown, they deepened the legend of Tunguska, making it not just a scientific puzzle, but a living story of human witnesses confronting something utterly beyond their comprehension. In those first-hand accounts lies the heartbeat of the Tunguska mystery. They reveal the raw terror of those who lived through it, the confusion of a people who saw their world ripped apart by forces they could not name. No instruments or theories could ever capture what they felt in those moments: the heat, the light, the sound, and the overwhelming sense that the sky itself had turned against them. Every witness who survived that morning carried the memory for life, a story that would outlive them all, echoing through time as humanity's closest encounter with a cosmic force that struck without warning and vanished without a trace. For almost 20 years after the Tunguska explosion, the site lay untouched, hidden deep in Siberia's vast wilderness. The world knew something extraordinary had happened, but the remoteness of the region, the lack of technology and political turmoil in Russia kept investigators far away. Theories spread faster than facts, and in the absence of evidence, imagination filled the void. But in 1927, one man decided to uncover the truth. His name was Leonid Kulik, a Russian mineralogist who would dedicate his life to solving the riddle of Tunguska. Kulik had first heard about the mysterious explosion while studying reports of meteorite falls. The descriptions fascinated him, a blast so powerful it leveled entire forests, yet no one had ever found a crater or meteorite fragments. He believed that the explosion had been caused by a massive meteorite impact, and he was determined to find it. But getting there was no small task. The Tunguska region was one of the most inaccessible places on Earth, filled with swamps, rivers, biting insects, and dense forests stretching for hundreds of miles. Still, Kulik assembled a small expedition and set off into the wild. The journey took weeks. The team faced freezing rivers, flooded valleys, and unrelenting cold. Local Iwenki tribesmen, still haunted by the memory of the explosion, refused to go near the blast site, believing it was cursed. Kulik eventually persuaded a few guides to lead him to the region, and when he finally arrived, what he found was both astonishing and perplexing. Before him lay an ocean of fallen trees, millions of them flattened, in every direction as though a giant had swept his hand across the forest. The trees all pointed outward from a central point, forming a near-perfect radial pattern. But at that center, instead of a giant crater, there was nothing. The ground was scorched, the vegetation sparse, but there was no impact hole, no chunks of rock, no obvious signs of an object having struck the earth. The devastation was immense, but the cause was invisible. Kulik wrote in his notes that it looked as though the explosion had occurred in the air rather than on the ground. The trees directly beneath the supposed epicenter were still standing upright, stripped of their branches and bark like matchsticks. It was a phenomenon that defied logic. How could something so powerful destroy everything around it but leave no trace of itself behind? He collected samples, took photographs, and mapped the destruction, hoping the clues would reveal the meteorite's resting place. He was convinced that if they dug deep enough, they would find metal fragments or at least evidence of a buried mass. But every attempt came up empty. There were no meteorite fragments, no melted rock, no chemical anomalies, nothing that pointed to a solid object from space. Kulik's findings shook the scientific world. For decades, researchers had assumed that every massive explosion on Earth must have left behind a crater, but Tunguska was different. It challenged the very definition of an impact event. Scientists began to consider the possibility that the object had exploded before, reaching the ground, a phenomenon later known as an airburst. In this theory, a comet or asteroid enters the atmosphere at such a high speed that the pressure and heat cause it to detonate mid-air, releasing an immense amount of energy without ever hitting the surface. It was a revolutionary concept, and Tunguska became its most dramatic example. But even that explanation didn't answer every question. If it had been an airburst, why was there no dust or debris left behind? Why did the soil show signs of intense heat but no melted minerals? And why were there reports of strange glowing skies for weeks after the explosion, seen thousands of miles away? In the years that followed, new expeditions returned to Tunguska. Scientists from the Soviet Union, Europe, and later the United States tried to uncover more clues. They drilled into the permafrost, examined tree rings, analyzed the soil, and took magnetic readings. Some found traces of tiny glass-like spheres embedded in the Earth, microscopic particles rich in silicon and nickel, elements often associated with meteorites. Others discovered that the trees near the epicenter showed unusual patterns of growth, as if radiation or chemical changes had affected them. But the mystery deepened when modern analysis began. Decades later, satellite imagery revealed that the pattern of destruction matched perfectly with a high-altitude explosion. Computer simulations showed that an object between 50 and 100 meters in diameter, entering the atmosphere at extreme velocity, could have caused the exact same damage. This object would have disintegrated completely before touching the ground, exploding with the force of 10 to 15 megatons of TNT and leaving behind the flattened forest we see today. Still, even the best models left room for doubt. No fragments of the original object have ever been recovered. Some researchers propose that the object might have been a comet made mostly of ice and gas, which vaporized entirely in the explosion, leaving almost no trace. Others suggested it was a stony asteroid that shattered into dust. Both theories could explain the lack of a crater, but not the strange atmospheric glow observed afterward. Then there were the more controversial investigations. Some scientists pointed to unusual magnetism in the area. Instruments would sometimes behave erratically, compasses would spin, and electromagnetic readings showed anomalies that couldn't easily be explained. A few even speculated that the explosion might have been caused by something not natural at all, perhaps an experimental energy discharge, or an unknown type of atmospheric reaction. Kulik himself never solved the mystery. He died during World War II, still convinced that a meteorite lay buried somewhere under the Siberian tundra. But his work laid the foundation for every investigation that followed. His photographs, his maps, and his data gave the world its first scientific glimpse into one of Earth's strangest events. Since then, hundreds of scientists have studied Tunguska using everything from drones to nuclear forensics, yet every discovery seems to raise more questions than it answers. The forest has regrown, but the mystery remains embedded in its soil, in its silence, and in the data that never quite adds up. What began as one man's search for a meteorite became one of the longest and most perplexing scientific investigations in history, a quest not only to understand what happened in the Siberian sky that morning, but to understand the forces that shape our planet and threaten it from beyond. The Tunguska explosion has always attracted mystery, but what truly keeps it alive in the public imagination are the wild and extraordinary theories that followed. Once the scientists had their say, others began to wonder, what if it wasn't just a meteor or a comet? What if the cause of the Tunguska blast came from something or someone not of this Earth? Among the dozens of explanations proposed over the years, two stand out for their audacity and fascination: the alien spacecraft theory and the Nikola Tesla experiment theory. Both challenge everything we think we know about what happened that morning in 1908. And both tap into something deeper: the human desire to find meaning behind the unexplainable. It began in the mid-20th century as Cold War paranoia, UFO sightings, and tales of extraterrestrial visitors dominated the public's attention. The Tunguska event, with its enormous power and unexplained nature, was the perfect candidate for an alien story. The alien spacecraft theory first surfaced seriously in the 1940s and 50s when Soviet researchers began re-examining the blast's patterns and anomalies. Some of them noticed strange details: the perfectly radial shape of the flattened forest, the upright trees at the epicenter, and the total absence of a crater or large debris field. To them, this didn't look like a random meteor explosion. It looked intentional, almost as if something had deliberately detonated in midair. UFO enthusiasts claim that an extraterrestrial craft might have malfunctioned or exploded over Siberia, either while entering Earth's atmosphere or while attempting to land. Others took it even further, suggesting that the explosion wasn't an accident at all, it was an act of sacrifice. They imagined a scenario where an alien spacecraft, realizing it was about to collide with Earth, deliberately self-destructed in the sky to prevent a catastrophic impact that could have wiped out an entire region or even altered the planet's climate. In this interpretation, the aliens weren't invaders, they were saviors who sacrificed themselves to spare humanity from destruction. The alien theory gained even more traction because, frankly, the official explanations never fully satisfied the public. No crater, no meteorite, no fragments. It seemed impossible that a natural object could produce so much devastation and yet vanish without a trace. Adding to the intrigue, some reports claim that unusual metallic particles were found in the area, along with radiation anomalies and magnetism readings that fluctuated unpredictably. Though none of this evidence was ever conclusively verified, it fueled decades of speculation. Was the Tunguska event the site of a cosmic accident involving technology far beyond our understanding? Then there's the even stranger theory, one that didn't come from outer space, but from one of the most brilliant and mysterious minds in human history, Nikola Tesla. In the early 1900s, Tesla was conducting experiments at his Wardenclyffe Tower facility in Long Island, New York. He was obsessed with wireless energy, transmitting electricity through the air across great distances. His vision was to power the entire world wirelessly, sending energy from the Earth itself through the atmosphere. Many believed his work bordered on the impossible, but Tesla was undeterred. And then suddenly, his experiments stopped. Around the same time, in 1908, something in Siberia exploded with unimaginable power. Years later, writers and theorists began connecting the dots. Could Tesla have accidentally caused the Tunguska explosion? According to this theory, Tesla was testing his Wardenclyffe Tower by directing a concentrated beam of energy toward the Arctic, possibly as part of an experiment to transmit power to a remote region. If the beam had overshot its target, it could have struck the Siberian wilderness, releasing its full energy upon contact and creating the same kind of destruction seen at Tunguska. Supporters of this theory point to Tesla's own writings. In one letter, He mentioned an experiment involving the transmission of electrical energy through the atmosphere, so powerful it could light up the skies over long distances. He even claimed that his system could split the Earth like an apple if misused. Those words, combined with the timing of the Tunguska event, have led many to wonder, was Tesla's technology responsible for one of the greatest unexplained explosions in history? The idea sounds far-fetched, but it has an eerie logic. Tesla was experimenting with frequencies and voltages that were barely understood in his time. He had already demonstrated his ability to send electricity wirelessly over short distances, lighting bulbs without wires and producing bolts of artificial lightning that arced across his laboratory. If he truly managed to focus that energy and send it through the ionosphere, it is not impossible to imagine that the beam could have discharged its energy somewhere far away, like the empty Siberian wilderness. Of course, skeptics are quick to point out that there's no concrete evidence tying Tesla to the event. His Wardenclyffe Tower had financial troubles, and many records from that period are incomplete. Still, the coincidence in timing and Tesla's almost mythical reputation make it irresistible. It fits perfectly with the mystique surrounding both Tesla and Tunguska, a story of genius and disaster, of human ambition brushing up against forces too powerful to control. Some versions of the Tesla theory even suggest that the inventor himself may have aimed the experiment intentionally at the Arctic to demonstrate his power to explorers in the North Pole, perhaps even as a message to financier Robert Peary, who was preparing for his expedition there. Tesla's experiments were shrouded in secrecy, and when the explosion occurred, he reportedly shut down his tower soon after. Was it guilt, fear, or simply coincidence? We may never know. The Tesla and alien theories both share one thing in common: they reflect our need to make sense of the impossible. When science can't provide clear answers, imagination steps in. For many, it is easier to believe that a brilliant inventor or an advanced civilization was behind Tunguska than to accept that nature alone could unleash such terrifying, precise destruction. Whether it was a beam from Tesla's tower or a doomed alien craft, these theories keep the story alive, turning a scientific puzzle into one of humanity's most enduring cosmic legends. More than a century after the Tunguska explosion, the world's greatest scientific minds have thrown every tool of modern science at the mystery. Satellites, seismic data, computer simulations, chemical analysis, everything points toward one central idea. The Tunguska event was the result of a massive airburst caused by a space object entering Earth's atmosphere. And yet, even with the data, the models, and the evidence, something still doesn't add up. The more scientists learn, the more the mystery seems to deepen. The most widely accepted modern explanation is that a small asteroid or comet somewhere between 50 and 100 meters in diameter entered the Earth's atmosphere at an incredibly high speed, around 60,000 kilometers per hour. As it plunged through the atmosphere, friction with the air caused it to heat up rapidly. The pressure became so intense that the object could no longer hold itself together. It disintegrated in midair, releasing an immense amount of energy equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. The explosion occurred about 5 to 10 kilometers above the ground, flattening millions of trees and creating the shock waves recorded around the world. This explanation fits many of the physical clues left behind. The radial pattern of trees, the absence of an impact crater, the evidence of extreme heat at the epicenter, all of it supports the airburst model. The trees directly under the explosion were scorched but left standing, while those farther out were blown down, creating a perfect circular blast pattern. It was a detonation powerful enough to wipe out everything within a 30-kilometer radius. But here's where things start to get complicated. Even with this explanation, the details don't align perfectly. If it was an asteroid, why haven't scientists ever found a single fragment? No metallic residue, no solid debris, no rock-like remains in the soil. Over 100 years of searching, and not a single piece of the culprit has been confirmed. This absence puzzles scientists to this day. A stony asteroid should have left traces of silicates, iron, or nickel in measurable quantities. Yet soil samples from the region show only faint tiny, microscopic glassy particles and dust that could have come from any number of natural sources. This is why many researchers turned their attention toward a cometary explanation. A comet, being mostly ice and gas with a small rocky core, could vaporize completely during entry, leaving little or no trace behind. The extreme heat from atmospheric compression would turn the ice into steam and the dust into vapor, dispersing everything into the upper atmosphere. This could also explain the strange reports of glowing skies seen over Europe and Asia for weeks after the event. Those glowing, noctilucent clouds might have formed from water vapor released by the disintegrating comet. It has a theory that elegantly ties together both the explosion and the mysterious atmospheric effects that followed. Still, there are problems even with this theory. If a comet disintegrated so high above the ground, could it really have caused such massive destruction below? The force required to flatten that vast area seems too great for something made mostly of ice. So, scientists started running computer models, simulating what would happen if an icy body or a stony asteroid entered at different angles and speeds. Each simulation brought them a step closer, but never to a perfect match. Some models showed too much destruction, others too little. The pattern of fallen trees and the heat signatures from the soil didn't line up neatly with any single scenario. In 2013, a new piece of evidence brought the Tunguska mystery back into focus. A meteor exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia, injuring over 1,000 people and shattering windows across 6 cities. The Chelyabinsk meteor was only about 20 meters wide, much smaller than the Tunguska object, but its explosion released energy equivalent to 500 kilotons of TNT. It was a shocking reminder that space can deliver devastating blows even without impact. Scientists studying Chelyabinsk realized that if an object only 2 or 3 times larger entered at a slightly lower altitude, the result would match the Tunguska event almost perfectly. It was a modern example of how an airburst could mimic the effects of a ground-level explosion without leaving a crater. Yet even with this parallel, Tunguska still holds secrets that Chelyabinsk does not. The magnetic anomalies recorded at the Tunguska site are one such enigma. Instruments used by later expeditions showed subtle but persistent disturbances in the area, magnetic field disturbances not seen elsewhere. Some researchers propose that these could have been caused by the intense plasma and electromagnetic energy generated during the explosion, but others suggest something even stranger. There are theories that the object that exploded wasn't a typical asteroid or comet at all. It could have been a fragment of a carbonaceous, chondrite-rich inorganic material and volatile compounds, a type of cosmic body rarely seen in direct collisions. Such a composition could explain the absence of metal fragments and the unique radiation patterns detected afterward. Another lingering question involves the timing and behavior of the blast itself. Eyewitnesses reported 2 distinct sounds, one before the explosion and another after, suggesting either multiple detonations or a breakup sequence in the atmosphere. Simulations show that such fragmentation could indeed happen, but the exact altitude and angle required to replicate Tunguska's pattern remain uncertain. Some scientists even suggest the object may have skimmed the atmosphere, bounced off it like a stone skipping on water, and exploded on a secondary descent, a graze and detonate event never witnessed before or since. Despite these modern insights, no single explanation fits every piece of evidence perfectly. The more technology advances, the more intricate the mystery becomes. Every new model adds detail, but also reveals new contradictions. What caused the precise symmetry of the blast? Why did some trees remain standing at the very center? And what explains the lingering atmospheric glow that turned night into day across continents? For all our progress in understanding asteroids, comets, and atmospheric explosions, Tunguska remains a frustrating exceptional puzzle that refuses to be neatly solved. Science has drawn the outlines of the event, but the picture inside is still blurred. There are still gaps, tiny yet crucial details that make all the difference between an explanation and the truth. The Tunguska explosion continues to stand at the crossroads of knowledge and wonder, reminding us that even in the age of data and satellites, some mysteries of nature remain as elusive as the stars themselves. The Tunguska explosion of 1908 may have happened in one of the most remote corners of Siberia, But its echo continues to shape the way humanity understands and prepares for cosmic threats. It wasn't just an isolated catastrophe. It was a warning shot from the universe, a message written in fire and shockwaves, reminding us of our planet's vulnerability. Over the years, this single event has become a cornerstone for scientists, astronomers, and planetary defense experts who study how fragile our world truly is beneath the vastness of space. Long before the modern space age, Tunguska opened humanity's eyes to the reality that Earth is not immune to cosmic impacts. For centuries, comets and asteroids were considered distant wonder celestial objects that could be admired safely from afar, but the destruction over Siberia shattered that illusion. Overnight, Tunguska transformed from an obscure Siberian mystery into a chilling demonstration of what could happen if a larger object ever entered our atmosphere. It forced scientists to consider a terrifying question: what if something bigger hit a populated area? The explosion served as a wake-up call, even though it took decades for its full significance to be recognized. When news of the Tunguska event first spread, few believed it could be natural. Some thought it was volcanic activity, others suspected military experiments or meteorological anomalies. But as the evidence mounted, it became clear that Earth had experienced a cosmic impact unlike anything in recorded history. The shockwave flattened forests the size of metropolitan cities. If that same event had occurred over London, New York, or Moscow, millions of lives could have been lost in an instant. This realization gave birth to a new field of science: planetary defense, an effort dedicated to studying and preventing future asteroid impacts. Throughout the 20th century, as technology advanced, Tunguska became the benchmark for understanding atmospheric explosions. Every new meteor event, every observation of a near-Earth object was compared against Tunguska. When the Chelyabinsk meteor exploded in 2013, scientists instantly drew parallels. Both events occurred over Russia, both involved meteor detonations, and both released tremendous energy without leaving a crater. But Chelyabinsk provided something Tunguska never could: videos, sensors, satellite data. By studying Chelyabinsk through the lens of Tunguska, researchers finally began to quantify just how frequent and how dangerous such cosmic encounters might be. From this research emerged sobering statistics. Scientists estimate that objects large enough to cause a Tunguska-sized explosion enter Earth's atmosphere once every few hundred years. That might sound rare, but in the scale of human civilization, it's alarmingly frequent. These are not extinction-level impacts, like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, but regional disasters capable of wiping out entire cities, disrupting global climates, and reshaping history in seconds. Tunguska was nature's proof that even a small rock from space could unleash the energy of a nuclear weapon. In response, space agencies began to act. NASA, the European Space Agency, and others established dedicated programs to detect and monitor near-Earth objects. Observatories around the world now scan the sky nightly, cataloging thousands of asteroids that could one day cross Earth's path. Missions like NASA's DART, which successfully altered the orbit of an asteroid in 2022, are direct descendants of Tunguska's legacy. The event taught humanity that awareness and preparation are the first steps toward protection. It's not science fiction anymore, it's survival science. But Tunguska's legacy isn't just about fear, it's also about curiosity and discovery. For decades, scientists have returned to the site, not to look for blame, but for understanding. The soil, the trees, the magnetic field all still bear subtle marks of that cosmic encounter. Each expedition reveals something new about the Earth's atmosphere, about energy transfer, about how our planet absorbs cosmic blows. Tunguska has become a natural laboratory, a place where researchers study how fragile ecosystems recover from massive devastation. The forest that once lay flattened has grown back thicker, stronger, and more vibrant than ever, a living symbol of resilience. Even beyond science, Tunguska left a deep mark on human imagination. It's become the stuff of legends, books, films, and conspiracy theories. Some see it as a cosmic accident, others as a test of Earth's endurance, and a few even speculate it was something otherworldly, an alien craft, a failed experiment, a message from beyond. These stories, while often far-fetched, remind us of something profound. Tunguska captured the collective imagination because it represents the unknown, the fine line between explanation and mystery, between science and wonder. In classrooms, documentaries, and scientific conferences, Tunguska continues to be studied not just as an event, but as a warning encoded in history. It reminds every generation that Earth floats through a cosmic shooting gallery. The meteors that streak across our skies are not harmless spectacles. They are reminders of what lurks beyond our vision. And while we now have telescopes, satellites, and warning systems, the truth remains that not all space objects can be detected in time. Tunguska teaches us that vigilance must be constant. There's also a broader lesson hidden in the ashes of that Siberian forest, a reminder of unity. The Tunguska event didn't affect a single nation, it affected the entire world. Its aftermath was studied by scientists from different countries, ideologies, and eras, all united by the same question: what happened? It became one of the few mysteries that transcended politics and borders, showing that when it comes to cosmic threats, humanity shares the same fate. The shockwave over Tunguska wasn't just physical, it was philosophical. It reminded us that the sky above belongs to everyone, and so does its danger. Over a century later, the trees have grown back, the craters have faded, and the forest hums with life again. But the question Tunguska left behind still echoes in the corridors of science and the silence of the stars. It's the question that drives astronomers to keep watching, engineers to keep innovating, and dreamers to keep wondering what else the universe is capable of. Because if one explosion in the remote Siberian wilderness could shake the planet without warning, what else might be waiting out there, beyond the veil of night, just one cosmic heartbeat away from Earth? As we journey back through the dense Siberian wilderness, through the flattened forests and glowing skies of 1908, one thing becomes clear: the Tunguska Explosion is far more than just an event from the past. It's a story that binds together science, mystery, and human curiosity. Even after more than a century of study, the Tunguska event continues to defy complete explanation. Was it an asteroid? A comet? Or something even more extraordinary, something beyond our current understanding? The answers remain just out of reach, shimmering like the morning mist over the Tunguska River. What makes Tunguska so powerful isn't only its destruction, but its message. It reminds us that we live on a fragile world, suspended in a vast cosmic ocean where unseen forces move silently above. It challenges us to keep questioning, to keep searching, and to never assume that our knowledge of the universe is complete. Every fallen tree, every disturbed compass, every eyewitness account whispers the same haunting truth: Earth has faced the unknown before, and it will again. But there's hope in that realization. From Tunguska's ashes rose the science of planetary defense, the technology to monitor the heavens, and the determination to protect our home from what lies beyond. The mystery that once terrified now inspires, a testament to humanity's resilience and curiosity. The Tunguska Explosion stands as a timeless reminder that the universe still holds secrets waiting to be unveiled. Perhaps one day, with new technology and deeper understanding, we'll uncover the final truth behind that blinding flash in the Siberian sky. Until then, Tunguska remains an open chapter in Earth's story, a cosmic question mark that continues to echo across time, urging us to look up, to wonder, and to remember that sometimes the greatest mysteries are the ones written in the stars.